Hi, my name is Steve Chizmar, and I'm the Bureau Director of PennDOT's Bureau of Innovations. It is my pleasure to host a series of podcasts celebrating the 10th anniversary of Pennsylvania's State Transportation Innovation Council, or STIC for short. The first installment of the STIC's 10th year anniversary podcast series focuses on the origins and early beginnings of the PA STIC, which was established in 2012 and held its first business meeting in March of that same year. Today, I am speaking with former FHWA PA Division Administrator Renee Sigel. Renee, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Renee, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what your involvement was in those very early days of the STIC?
Sure, happy to. So I was born and raised in Pennsylvania and have been a lifelong Steelers fan, even though right now I do not live in Pennsylvania. I graduated from Shippensburg University in Pennsylvania and literally worked my entire career in transportation. Last year, I retired from the Federal Highway Administration after 30 years, which was hard to believe. But for almost 9 years of that, I was the FHWA Division Administrator in Pennsylvania. And it was during that time that FHWA developed the Everyday Counts program. And the STIC, the Statewide Transportation Innovation Council, was an important part of the Everyday Counts program. So I was very fortunate to be part of the team that developed the initial program in Pennsylvania. And I was honored to co-chair the STIC with former Secretaries Barry Shoak and Leslie Richards for about 5 years. So you're right, I was in on the ground floor and it was just a great experience.
Well, thank you, Renee. With that in mind, I remember some of those very early meetings with the STIC, and it was a crazy, hectic time, but so much got done. It just moved in the right direction. It almost seems from the get-go. With that in mind, what was the original vision for the STIC?
The original vision, as put out by Federal Highway, was to bring public and private transportation stakeholders and academia together to evaluate existing innovations that weren't quite, let me start again. The original vision for the STIC by FHWA was to bring public and private transportation stakeholders and academia together to evaluate existing innovations not widely used and spearhead their development. Fortunately, in Pennsylvania went gangbusters on that, and later Pennsylvania advanced to using the STIC to identify opportunities to research new opportunities for new innovations and new ways to deploy these innovations. So it was pretty exciting in Pennsylvania.
Well, thank you, Renee. Yeah, I mean, the STIC itself was innovative because it brought together, the transportation industry. It brought together non-traditional partners. It seemed like virtually everyone who touched transportation was in that room at some point. Now that said, I mean, there were some hurdles. There were some hurdles we had to overcome to get this off the ground. With that in mind, what do you think are some of the largest hurdles that were faced here in PA when the STIC was created?
I think the largest hurdle, and I'll admit maybe even a little on my part, how's that? I'll be honest. There was just a lot of skepticism in the beginning. Is this just a fleeting initiative? I still remember someone saying, is this the flavor of the day? There were others that said, hey, can we really afford the time and effort that this is going to take? There were others that were like, will we even get other stakeholders to participate? Will they just see this as a federal highway and PennDOT initiative? So I think skepticism was really the first big hurdle we had to overcome.
And how did you overcome that? What did you put in place to convince folks that, hey, this wasn't the flavor of the day?
I think the biggest thing was commitment from top leadership. Former Secretary Barry Shoak, this tied right in with his top focus areas at the time, which was PennDOT's next generation and modernization efforts. So he really saw the benefits of this program instantly, and he committed the resources to saying, I'm going to make this a go. So we had staff on it. That was just amazing. And when folks saw his commitment to it, even my commitment to it from Federal Highway, folks really started to buy in and say, hey, this could work. And I think the second thing that we did that really helped overcome skepticism, we had some early winners. We looked for some easy innovations to deploy quickly in Pennsylvania. And when we laid out the plan and we saw some of the innovations quickly being deployed in Pennsylvania, folks became believers and the skepticism started to go away. And it was great.
Well, thank you, Renee. And I think you kind of touched on this next question that I'm going to ask in regards to skepticism. But what advice would you give another state or even a similar PA state agency? I mean, let's step outside of transportation for a second. What advice would you give them if they were trying to establish a similar innovations council?
Sure, great. You're right, I did touch on it. Certainly, it takes strong commitment from the leadership at the top. No matter where you're trying to set up an innovation council, it's got to have that commitment from the top. And just not even like in Pennsylvania's case, we had Secretary Shoke's commitment, and then later on, Secretary Richards' commitment. But also a lot of other leaders in PennDOT stepped up to the plate, like Tom Prestash, Joe Cesar, Dan Cesna, Bill Pettit, even Mark Compton over at the PA Turnpike was a very strong supporter and leader. And so with these mid-level or higher level, senior level leaders and PennDOT stepping up really showed the commitment. And so I would say it's important to get on some early adopters, right? Some early supporters to show commitment to the program. The second part of maybe some advice that I would give is to someone trying to establish an innovation council is to have a strong creative team that is well organized. The establishment of Pennsylvania STIC really benefited from a team of forward thinkers and collaborators like Karen Vandervoort, Mike Benini, Nolan Ritchie, Christine Riley, Rich Heineman, Gavin Gray, Jamie Leganos. Sorry if I missed any of those early folks, but this was really the team that took the vision of a STIC and made it a reality. And so they were just a high performing team. So putting together a team like that has vision, that has some practical experience, and that just really worked well together was really key to the success of Pennsylvania STIC.
Well, thank you, Renee. I mean, during those early days, it was a busy time with the STIC. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of moving pieces. Tags were being formed. We were bringing folks in. It was a crazy time, but it was a fantastic time to be, at the leading edge of such an innovative practice for one of a better term. But setting all that aside, I know it was a busy time for you as well. What is your most memorable moment during your involvement with the STIC?
Oh, great question. There were so many. There were several. I'll go with the one, only because it's really from a national perspective. In 2016, FHWA selected Pennsylvania to host the Everyday Counts Showcase and the STIC Roundtable, which highlighted the Commonwealth as a nationally recognized model of successful implementation of the STIC initiative. The event featured former USDOT Secretary Victor Mendez, former FHWA Administrator Greg Nadeau, former Secretary Leslie Richards was in attendance. Members of the Pennsylvania STIC all attended. We set up the top STIC innovations were showcased through displays and hands-on demonstrations that were staffed by the technical experts and STIC members. USDOT Secretary Anthony Fox spoke through a video message to congratulate the Pennsylvania STIC on their successful implementation of innovations. And so I think just that national recognition for the great work that PennDOT did, the whole STIC did, was just really sticks out in my mind as being really memorable. And through that effort, they took the PennDOT STIC, the Pennsylvania STIC, they took interviews, they got footage from the event, and these were shared nationwide with other STICs. to promote the strategies that were effective in Pennsylvania. So kudos to Pennsylvania STIC and that national recognition, but that was really a memorable event for me.
Thanks, Renee. Renee, thinking about some of the stick innovations that have come through the years. I mean, I think about more mixed asphalt, intelligent compaction, high friction surfaces. There's just so many innovations that went through the process and really are now part of everyday life here at PennDOT. But do any innovations particularly stand out to you in terms of benefits to Pennsylvanians? And if so, why is that?
Oh, and you hit mine exactly. And for me, one of the first ones was the high friction surface treatment. Fatalities from crashes on our nation's highway are still a major problem in this country. Even in Pennsylvania, over 1,000 people die every year on Pennsylvania's roadways. So I personally love innovations that save lives. And the high friction surface treatment is an innovation that improves the safety of motorists at high priority crash locations. And, I still remember there was one location, and I believe it was on State Route 611 out in Northampton County, maybe. The frequency of crashes after we applied the high friction surface treatment was reduced by 100%. I think PennDOT went on to evaluate the cost benefit of high friction surface treatments and found that it saves roughly one life each year for every 15 locations that it was applied. That's huge. That's one more person every year that went home to their family. And so for me, I think that is just a fabulous innovation that we deployed in Pennsylvania, that they're still deploying, and that's saving lives. So that one's near and dear to my heart.
Thank you, Renee. Speaking about innovation, I mean, it's clear that innovation is kind of the hallmark of everything that we try to do. I mean, the bottom line is innovation is helping to save dollars. It's helping to keep folks safer. Um, but let me just step back from that for a second. Why is collaboration so important in helping to advance innovations?
Wow, I think there are just so many benefits to collaboration. Um, let's see, a couple that come to my mind right off the bat. One, it provides access to innovative funding opportunities. We were able to do that in Pennsylvania to pull different funding sources together because of that collaboration, whether it was some funding from one of the other Pennsylvania state agencies, the Turnpike Commission, PennDOT, Federal Highway. So there were some great opportunities there. I think it provides increased opportunities for innovations to have a bigger impact, right? I think we had the impervious surface innovation that one of the other state agencies picked up and started using in their parking areas. Collaboration, I think, allows for the strengths of all parties to be recognized and utilized, which was really key to our success. I also believe that interprofessional, interdisciplinary collaboration is critical to promoting transportation equity, which is greatly needed in our society today. And so through that collaboration, I think we can greatly improve transportation equity in Pennsylvania and in the nation.
Thank you, Renee. Renee, my next question, I'm sure it's going to be something very near and dear to your heart. It's really the talking about the overall success of the Pennsylvania stick. Just last week, some colleagues and I were on the phone with the state of Maine, excuse me, talking about the stick, talking about innovations in general. But the reality is the Pennsylvania stick has been held up numerous times as a model for success. Or excuse me, let me do a retake. The Pennsylvania stick has been held up numerous times as a model for success. I mean, just since the short time that the stick moved to the Bureau of Innovations, I know we've talked with Maryland, we've talked with Texas, we've talked with North Carolina, just a whole host of states about how we're doing things here in PA. Um, why do you think the Pennsylvania stick stands out from the rest? And kind of a second part question is why has it been so successful?
Oh, wow, great question. I think there are lots of reasons. One we already touched upon, right, was that leadership commitment. That leadership commitment, which continued through now, three secretaries, Secretary Shoak, Secretary Richards, and now your current secretary, have maintained that commitment to the STIC. I think the fact that Pennsylvania was one of the earliest ones to include consultants and contractor representatives on the STIC. Local townships and municipalities were represented. Academia was represented on our STIC. Other state agencies. And just having that, as we touched upon, that collaboration from all those different interdisciplinary and interprofessional folks on our STIC really helped us advance innovation quickly. I think that another reason for, and again, we touched on this, another reason for the success was just that team that started this out. They came up with a great model and having the transportation advisory groups that got a lot of grassroots folks involved from both consultants world, contractors, as well as staff at PennDOT and FHWA involved in looking at innovations and developing the deployment plans. So they had a sense of ownership to say, hey, here's an innovation we want to try in Pennsylvania, and here is the deployment plan. And those deployment plans were critical to the success because it showed, hey, this is how we're going to deploy this in Pennsylvania. So folks were committed to that. They own these plans. Hey, I developed this plan. I'm going to see it through. And then when we had some early successes, when we were able to say, hey, you proposed this innovation to deploy, we deployed it, here's the success that we're having. Success breeds success, right? And so that just kept growing. It's like starting the little snowball at the top of the hill, and by the time you get to the bottom, you have a big avalanche. I think that's really what happened with the Pennsylvania STIC.
Renee, thank you. You mentioned earlier that I guess you retired a year ago, was it?
Yes,
Yes.
July. So what, 8 months ago, something like that?
Well, before that time, you spent what 30 years in the transportation industry, and even though you took off your hard hat, so to speak, just last year, I know that you're still in tune with transportation, both here in Pennsylvania as well as on the national level. Using that knowledge, what do you think are some of the larger challenges facing transportation industry or facing the transportation industry here in PA, as well as on the national level, and how can the STIC and innovations help address those challenges?
Oh, great question. Unfortunately, I think some of the same challenges we faced in the past 10 years are the same challenges that we're going to face. Um, Hold on one sec. I lost you. Are you still there? All right. Sorry. I lost you. Are you back?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Sorry. I lost you.
Oh, technically, it could have been me. Perhaps I hit the wrong button. I apologize.
No, I think it's on this head. So sorry about that. Let's try it. Let's go back. I'll start from the beginning of that question because I don't know where we ended off. So I think we continue to have some of the same challenges that we've had right for the last 10 years in transportation, such as congestion. I mentioned earlier the fatalities that we have, over 35,000 people a year dying on our nation's highways. We still have an aging infrastructure and equity. And our government leaders need the tools that help them work in new and innovative ways to solve these challenges. And this is where I think the STIC will continue to play a great role in those challenges. I mean, we've always said for years and years, we can't build our way out of these problems. It's going to take innovation. And that's where the STIC is vital. Our government leaders aren't the ones that come up with these innovations. It's really our staff, the people on the ground that really have the best ideas. And that's really where the STIC plays a great role, in that our staff, that the people on the ground can propose innovations that will help us address congestion, that will help us save lives, that will help us be us more efficient and effective in addressing our aging infrastructure issues. Um, I think there are some real exciting things on the horizon. I mean, we see technology just still continuing to grow exponentially right in our society. And I think over the next 10 years, that isn't going to change. And so I think the STIC can help identify where these new technologies can be deployed to address challenges such as congestion, safety, even equity. I think equity will take addressing transportation equity in the nation and in Pennsylvania will take innovative solutions so that all have equal access to transportation in the future. And so that collaboration that occurs so often on the STIC, whether it's in the TAG or in the Innovation Council itself, will really help in promoting innovations and research that will address these challenges. I think that was
Renee,
a horrible answer, by the way.
no, no, thank you. In
I
fact,
just kind of rambled.
well, in fact, I want to take that question one step further. I want you to kind of look in that crystal ball, and where do you see the stick going in the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, both on the federal level as at the states.
I think one area, and I touched on it, is technology. I think a lot of the innovations that we have looked at in the past were very construction oriented, maybe, or process oriented, like high friction surface treatment or safety symposiums, right? I think in the future, a lot more of our innovations will be technology based. I only say that because when I look at things such as the growth right now in electric vehicles, right? And some of the car manufacturers saying that by what, 2035, which is really only 13 years away, right? That the majority of their fleet is going to be electric. Well, that's going to bring about significant changes to our system, right? And the technology that we see in cars. Uh, Unfortunately, my 16-year-old car recently died and we had to replace it. And so we got a 2021 car. And I'm just blown away by all the technology that's in this 2021 car. A lot of it related to safety, right? And I think that's only going to continue greatly in the next 10 years. And so one of the keys to the STIC will be to say, how do we take technology innovations and deploy them quicker and faster in Pennsylvania and in the nation to address things like congestion and safety and our aging infrastructure and our equity. And so I think the STIC in the next 10 years should definitely be looking at focusing on the technology aspects, the innovation technology aspects that are coming about. So at least I hope that that's a future focus area for the STIC in the next 5 to 10 years, because I think it can be a very, very effective forum for addressing these new challenges and these emerging technologies.
Renee, thank you. That's some great thoughts and some great discussion. Again, we're speaking with Renee Sigel, the former PA Division Administrator for the Federal Highway Administration. Renee, is there anything I'm missing? Anything that you wish I would have asked?
Um, I don't think so. This was great. I've really enjoyed it. I found an old quote from early on in the Everyday Counts era of like 2012, 2013, somewhere in there, and that I made. And I think it's still really valid now and for the future. There is nothing more important and inspirational than being on the forefront of innovation for the transportation industry. The FHWA with its EDC program, along with the strong partnership with PennDOT and their STIC, are driving and will drive innovation into the nation's highways for a safer and more efficient tomorrow. And I think that quote is still valid today. It's just the STIC has been and will be just an amazing opportunity to address the challenges of our transportation system. And it really is, it's inspirational, right, to be part of innovation. And so I'm excited. I can't wait to do this again in another 10 years. Of course, I'll be retired then, 11 years, but I still would be excited to come back in 10 years and see what the STIC is doing. So thank you for having me today. I really appreciate this opportunity to do this.
Thank you for joining us today and for helping us celebrate the PA STIC's 10th anniversary and its efforts to develop and deploy innovations across Pennsylvania. Visit www.penndot.pa.gov/STIC to learn more about the PA STIC and how we are innovating transportation in Pennsylvania.